Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Lake of the Isles Lutheran Church. We are so happy to see all of you here, so many for this, should be an interesting and informative meeting on the topic of public safety. I want to begin, we have a range of speakers here who I'll introduce in a moment, some of whom are known to you, some of whom are probably not. But I do want to begin with a few words of thank you. That's always a good place to start. First off, thank you so much to all of you for taking time out from your evening to be here. We hope you find this interesting. We hope you find it informative and helpful. But all the planning and preparation in the world doesn't matter if people aren't here to take it in and think about what's being said. So thank you so much. I want to extend a special thank you as well to the organizers of this event. This is a collaboration between 4 different neighborhood organizations, East Isles, Lowry Hill, Kenwood, and Sidna. And specifically, I want to thank each organization appointed one person to be on this ad hoc committee to pull this together. And I want to extend a special thank you to Sue Westerman from Lowry Hill, Julia Edelman from East Isles, Lori Mittag from Kenwood, and Patty Schmitz from Sidna. Without this, this would not have happened. Also, a very special thank you to Eileen Johnson, who helped arrange for most of the speakers this evening. For those of you who don't know Eileen, you'll be hearing from her later on, but she is the founder of the many different neighborhood safety walking groups that have sprung up around the Twin Cities. Her late husband was a career officer with the 5th Precinct, and I personally don't know a more effective liaison between law enforcement and the broader community than Eileen. So a very special thank you to her as well. Also, just a couple other notes. Special thanks to staff here at Lake of the Isles Lutheran Church. Our pastor, Arden Haug, is over there. Arden, if you can just raise your hand. If you have any logistical questions, you feel free to flag either him down or me down throughout this presentation. We'll be circulating. The really important question is the restrooms are through those doors, down the stairs, and to your left. We've got a men's and women's room, totally accessible. There's an elevator for people who prefer that. And then finally, a thank you to the one person you can't see, the man behind the curtain, and that is Joseph Lemire, who runs our AV department here along with Jim Olson. We are live streaming and recording this event. It's the first time we've done this for one of these neighborhood gatherings, but they're the ones who make the magic happen, so a big thank you to them. Finally, getting back to live streaming, a logistical note. At prior gatherings, we've been a little bit more informal where, we can just raise our hands. If you have questions, people stand up, they say what's on their mind. Because we are live streaming and we already have an audience of, last I checked, 49 people joining us online, we're going to change the format to make it more accessible for them. So when our speakers are done, we are going to be collecting questions from the audience. We've got a group of community service officers who are here along with volunteers from the Neighborhood Association. They've got 3x5 cards. If you don't have one already, just flag them down, take a card, write down your question, and then Lori and I are going to review the questions as they come in, and we will ask as many as we can at the end of the presentation, time permitting. We're planning to go to about 8:30 or so. We'll probably favor the questions that get asked the most, the ones that seem the most current, but if there's something that seems like it might elicit a particularly interesting answer, we might favor that as well. So just ask your questions. We'll try to get as many in as we can. In terms of speakers this evening, we're going to begin with Chief of Police Brian O'Hara, who we're very happy can join us. He will be followed by Deanna Douglas and Kat Payne, both of whom are affiliated with our 911 services, and I think they'll have some interesting comments for you. After that, I believe the batting order is 5th Precinct Inspector Christie Nelson. We're always happy to see Christie here, in part because her Aunt Gail is one of our former pastors. After that, we're going to have Lieutenant Calvin Nobles from the Park Police. In this neck of the woods, we're almost as much parks as cities, so they're very important to us as well. Then Sergeant Garrett Parton, who's the Chief Information Officer for the City Police. Eileen Johnson, and then our last speaker, who's not able to be here yet because of a prior event, is Community Safety Commissioner Todd Barnett. And we're very happy to have him joining us. He has overall responsibility for police, for fire, for 911, anything sounding in public safety, the buck generally stops with him. So that's what we've got. Flag me down if you have any questions. And without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Chief O'Hara.
Thank you so much for having me and for giving such a warm welcome. My name is Brian O'Hara. I've been the police chief in Minneapolis for a little over 2 years now. It's my first time actually in this church here, although I've been outside past it many times. The neighborhood here is absolutely beautiful, and it's an honor to be here tonight with you all. Thank you. I just echo some of Marty's sentiments. Thank you to the pastor and to the parish here for having us. Thank you to Miss Eileen Johnson and the Orange Army that is here. Eileen, you've been an absolute blessing for me, for the police department, and especially for the families of our fallen officers. The work you do is tremendous. Thank you so much. Yes. And thank you to the police officers that are here, the community service officers in the back, the sergeant officers from the 5th Precinct. Thank you for everything that you all do for your service. Additionally, I have to recognize the folks from 911, the Minneapolis Emergency Communications. Our dispatchers, our 911 call takers, have an incredibly stressful and difficult job. They are not only our lifeline when we need help and call for it over the radio, we also know they're the lifeline for everyone in the community, and it's not recognized enough. So thank you so much for your service to the city. So I mentioned earlier I was taking my instructions from Eileen, and I'm going to do the best I can to address everything that Eileen has told me is important to you all. So I mentioned I came here a little over 2 years ago as the police chief, and frankly, I'm thankful to God that we are not in the same situation we were in about 2.5 years ago. When I first got here, it was much worse than I could have anticipated. The hurt that people were experiencing, both in the community and internally, from the folks in the police department that stuck around, everything that they endured, is just not describable. Frankly, the situation was, I felt like crime was out of control. The police department was shrinking literally every single month. We were not getting people wanting to come in sufficient numbers. And there was just not a sense of hope at all. Every police station I went to, every roll call that I talked to officers, it was a very, very dark situation. I would ask police officers, what do we need to do to get recruiting? And officers almost uniformly would tell me, anybody who asks me about becoming a cop, I tell them, don't come here. Everyone is leaving. People hate us. This is not the place to go. Thankfully, that is not the case today. Today, we have many people who are coming on who are sons and daughters of current police officers, which is great, as well as lots of folks from communities that were not represented in numbers here in the past, and a lot of young people from the city that are coming on. The police department, in terms of staffing, the police department bottomed out close to a year ago, hitting the lowest number it had been in modern history. In at least 4 decades, about 560 sworn members, and since then, gradually, the numbers have started to increase. We welcomed, the beginning of the month, up at Fellowship Baptist Church, we welcomed some 30 some odd new young people in training, 24 cadets, I believe another 9 community service officers. So those are young people that are in various stages of their college, that once they graduate college, they will be going to the police academy and then coming out on the street. The end of the month, actually it's next Thursday, we're going to be swearing in about 20 new police officers, both recruits and some lateral transfers, as well as welcoming another 35 or so interns that will soon be cadets in the police department. So all in all, next Thursday night, we're going to have about 100 young people who are in various stages of becoming an officer, as well as another 20 that we're going to be swearing in as Minneapolis police officers. So that is a tremendous sign of progress. And you know, one of the main reasons why that has been possible, frankly, is the mayor has given me the authority that I have asked for, the ability to do more in terms of reaching out to young people and cutting through some of the bureaucracy that had traditionally been here. And with that, we have in the back is Lieutenant Kenny Anderson. He's in the blue shirt, hiding in the back there. He leads our recruiting efforts. And Kenny and Sergeant Jeremy Randall, who used to be a police officer in this precinct, have been relentless. They've been practically stalking people, you know, that say they want to become police officers, and tell them, come in, we'll show you, what are you interested in? We'll tell you everything we can do for you, and we want you here, we'll support you, and all those types of things that are just necessary. And I think that's been a huge deal, turning things around. And this is going to be a historic year in terms of rebuilding the department. I am hopeful that by the end of the year, we may wind up having the largest recruit class the city has ever had. That's a real possibility. If nothing else, it will likely be the largest class since at least 1996. So we're looking to make significant progress, and we're getting exactly the type of candidates that people say they want. We're getting a lot of young people from the city. We're getting sons and daughters of current members who are deeply attached to the department, to the city, as well as you know, a lot of people from different communities, some folks who were born in different countries around the world that weren't historically represented here. So they are an amazing group. There's many of them standing in the back there, and I brag about them wherever I go, and anybody that'll listen, and I'm incredibly proud of the people that we have here today. You know, I just want to touch on one thing briefly because it's in the news. Well, there's a bunch of stuff in the news that affects us lately, but you know, one thing top of mind is the impending federal consent decree, and there's been a lot of stuff in the media and a lot of misinformation and disinformation, and there's scare tactics and everything else going on. So I just want to level set so that people have an understanding. For those who don't know, the city came to an agreement with the Department of Justice several weeks ago to have a federal consent decree to reform the Minneapolis Police Department. That agreement has been filed in federal court. However, a federal judge has not made it a court order yet. That is a normal part of the process. And what has happened in the last 24 hours or so, if you check the media, is that the new Justice Administration has issued a memo and given the indication that they want to pull out of any impending consent decrees. Let me be as clear as possible on this. This is something that I anticipated would happen, because this is exactly what happened 4 years ago. 4 years ago, Baltimore was in the same situation that we are, that the city of Baltimore and the DOJ came to an agreement. They filed it in court. There's a new DOJ, a new Attorney General. They tried to pull out of it. Bottom line is the federal judge sitting in Baltimore is the person that had the authority, and Baltimore has a consent decree, which is exactly what I anticipate happening here. No matter what the city or the DOJ say at this point, the decision is ultimately up to a federal judge. So while it is possible the judge might decide not to move forward, it is not at all probable. So just don't listen to a lot of the craziness that is out there online and the scare tactics or whatever. The facts are, this is the decision that a judge would have to make at this point. Another thing I want to say, because I feel like it gets lost in all of this, is Minneapolis is different from any other city that's been in this situation before. And the reason why that is because we already have a consent decree with the state of Minnesota. We have an agreement that covers almost everything every other consent decree that there is around the country covers, with calling for additional training, calling for additional health and wellness supports for officers, community input. There's been dozens and dozens of meetings over the last year to get community input around stop, search, and arrest policies, use of force policies, how we evaluate disparate impact of enforcement actions based on race, internal affairs practice, supervision, accountability, all of these things that people are concerned about as systemic problems in policing in America. All of that is being addressed in the state consent decree, and there's been a whole lot of work that's been happening over the last year, and we're soon to be getting final approval on dozens of policies that are pursuant to that state consent decree, as well as new training that'll ultimately roll out. So there is a whole lot of work that's already been happening, and so don't think that this is something entirely new, because it's just not. And Minneapolis is in a better position than any other city that has been in this situation in the past. One thing that Eileen mentioned, and I also want to touch upon, because there are some differences between the two agreements, right? The state consent decree can only deal with issues that are under state law, and the federal consent decree can deal with federal issues. So one of them that is different is the American with Disabilities Act, which is what the feds use to encourage the expansion of BCR, the Behavioral Healthcare Response Workers. And frankly, I think, I was a little shocked that it's something that was criticized, in the DOJ's report, because I honestly believe Minneapolis has already a model and one of the best systems that there is with the provider that we have. We have mental health care professionals that respond. They get sent by 911 and our dispatchers. They respond on their own when it's safe and appropriate for them to do so. They respond with the police, or not at all, if there is some type of safety issue. So that's something that will be expanded under the federal consent decree, as well as there'll be additional training for Minneapolis police officers. So I just wanted to highlight that. In terms of, and I know the inspector will speak after me, the inspector is the quarterback, essentially, of dealing with crime and dealing with neighborhood issues locally. But I can tell you, some things in general. Serious street crime, violence has generally been declining over the last couple of years. We've had a problem, particularly with robberies in this part of the city. It was really bad the beginning of last year. I think the first weekend in February, we had one night where in a short period, we had a couple dozen robberies happen. Because we had a problem with robbery sprees, with juveniles that were going around in groups in stolen cars and then committing a number of street robberies, one after the other after the other. And it took a lot of folks by surprise. So one thing that we did is right after I saw that happened, I was surprised because I read about it when I woke up in the morning and was reading the police reports. To me, when something that significant happens, regardless of what time it is, I want to know about it. So that's one thing that we did is I require now the sergeants to notify me immediately whenever we notice a crime spree pattern happening. And then what we do is we stop all non-emergency responses around the city. We call for help from the county sheriff, from transit, from the state patrol. We ask for their helicopter to come, and we flood the area where these crime sprees have been happening. And the cops have been successful in a lot of times either stopping the crime spree when it happens, or in a lot of times making arrests right after the fact. And that's important because the only reason why that has happened is because we have asked people from the community to call us when you see something suspicious, when you see something wrong, we think somebody might be driving around staking out the neighborhood. And there's plenty of examples when we've done this crime pattern response that we've captured people because we've gotten tips from people calling 911 saying something that they've seen, and without even realizing that's who we're looking at because they just robbed two people, on the other side of town. So that's one thing that that I think is very important to keep in mind. And I think there was actually one slide I think we had, if we're able to show it. Yeah. So here's what was happening in terms of robbery. That's the beginning of the year. That's around that first weekend in February. This is just for the neighborhood immediately around here. The spike would be even greater if we included the entire city, but this is something that was impacting people on the street here. And as you can see, after we implemented the protocol and began, shutting things down, flooding the area, making arrests, whenever we have had robbery sprees, they've been, less and less of an impact than what they had been. So I think those are the main issues I was asked to cover. Is there anything else, or? Okay. The boss said the questions will be at the end. So thank you so much for having me, and I'll be around for
managers at Minneapolis 911, and with me is one of our wonderful call takers, Kat Payne. We're going to go through some of the commonly asked questions that we get about 911 or when you call 911. Go through some of the best things to do and information and kind of why we do what we do, and then kind of compare when to call 311 and 911. We are essentially the link between the public and emergency responders. To give you some numbers, in 2023 we answered over 600,000 phone calls, about 1,700 a day. In our busy summer months, we answer over 10,000 calls in a week. We get very busy. Add on to that some events or some big thing happening that can quickly go up. To address staffing, I know the chief talked on his staffing. Our staffing as well has gotten increasingly better. Last year, we hired over 30 people. For each of those people, it's over 3 months of training. So our call takers, our numbers are looking good. Overtime's going down, and I think as a center, we're happier, healthier, and ready to be there for all of you.
So what we do within our department, of course, we answer 911 calls. Oh, I'm sorry about that. What I was just saying here is, of course, what we do here within our department is we answer 911 calls. That also includes our non-emergency line. So we take both emergency and non-emergency lines, so that's why sometimes it can tend to get very busy and backed up if it keeps ringing or just disconnects. That's because, again, we tend to answer both lines and it can get extremely busy. We dispatch responders to calls for service. We provide support services to partner agencies, and we also handle our shot spotter and then the bait vehicle program.
What happens when you call 911? I know a common question that I was asked to bring up is, why, when you call, does it just ring? At any given time, we have a set number of call takers. It could be 5, 6, 7, depending on the time of day. As you can imagine, if we get something like shots fired in an area or even an accident on a busy street, we could get 20 people calling at one time. So those 6 operators have to answer those 20 calls, so we triage those calls. We try to quickly ask questions and figure out if maybe you weren't involved and you were just driving by. We want to get to someone who was maybe there, has injuries, or has that information that we need. So if it's ringing, stay on the line, don't hang up. If you do hang up and then call back, you're put at the end of the line again. Don't have another person call as well, because that's just adding another call to the queue and taking another operator out. We just ask that you stay on, and we will get to you as soon as possible. I know it seems like a long time when you've experienced something traumatic or something bad has happened, but we promise we will get to you. We just have to work our way through the incoming calls. Now, the number one piece of information that we need from you is location. Address, preferably. If you don't have an address, an intersection, even a business, we can find you. If you have a name of an apartment building, anything, we can Google it. But we do need your help getting that information, because without it, we can't get you help. We will ask, tell me exactly what happened. We want to know what just happened. We don't need to know the long story, just exactly what you saw. We do get stories of, we do get like last year history sometime. Don't need it. After that, we ask a series of questions, and it seems like a lot of questions sometimes, and I realize that, but every question is important and helps us determine priority of the call, when we need to go, how fast we need to get people there, what type of call it is, what responders need to go. Every single question is important. You guys are our eyes and our ears out there. We have no clue what's going on until we ask all of these questions. We'll ask about weapons, to describe any vehicles or persons involved, if anybody needs medical attention, and if you're in an apartment building or a bigger business building even, we ask, how do we get in? What's the best way in? The best entrance? Will someone meet us at the door? All of that is extremely important for our responders. We are essentially setting up the responders for the safest arrival and the most information and the best outcome for each and every call. And I know it's hard in traumatic situations. Try to stay calm. We can help you do that. Answer all questions, and then don't hang up until we disconnect with you.
We do offer language line services as well, so if there's any incident that occurs where the individual involved may not speak English as their first language, they can still call and relay whatever information necessary to us. All they have to do is, get on the line and tell us what language they speak, and we can get that language line or interpreter connected to the call to gather that information. That does also include, we have like TTY services as well. So if there's any like hearing impaired individuals that aren't able to verbally speak, we have that option as well. And furthermore, texting, but oh, I didn't hear this. We also have texting. So in any event that you're not able to call and verbally speak with us, we have 911 texting available. We do ask that you try to call if you're able to. We would prefer that. It's just quicker, it's easier for us. But again, if there's any circumstances where you're just not able to for any purposes where you're hiding, or there's sensitive information that you don't want to give out to people around you, or again, there's people around you that you're intentionally trying to, report or call on, or again, any safety concern, just text us, but again, call if necessary or if you're able to.
Right. What happens when you call 911? We get an incoming 911 call. Based on those questions we ask, we determine if we're going to enter a call for a responder to come out, or if we're going to refer you to, say, 311. Or any other agency within the city or outside of the city. There might be somewhere that's better equipped to handle what's going on. If we do enter a call for service related to your call, our call taker will take the information, they'll ask their questions, it goes into what we call our computer-aided dispatch, or our CAD. Once they enter the information, they have a copy of that call. A copy goes to, let's say, the police dispatcher or the fire dispatcher. It's sent so simultaneously while that call taker is still on the phone with you, the police dispatcher is seeing what's going on. So if it's a shots fired or something of high priority, my call taker is still on the phone and the dispatcher has it, so they're immediately dispatching resources. They're available. So there is no time delay. I think a lot of times people think that we're asking questions and it's delaying the service of the responders. It's absolutely not. Those things kind of happen simultaneously in the background. So, and that's true for if it's a medical call. Call taker enters it, it goes to the medical services, and they send out the resources. All right, when to call 911 versus 311? You're going to call 911 for anything that requires emergency services. If a police officer is needed on scene, if it's a medical call, if there's something actively happening right then, if you saw someone break into your neighbor's house, call 911. Call if you or someone else needs a fire department to respond, if there's a fire, of course. Call if you or someone you know is having a mental health concern. The chief mentioned BCR. We do dispatch for the BCR teams, so those calls are taken through us. An animal bite, we dispatch animal control services as well. Anything that's in progress or any suspicious criminal activity that you witness.
So we, of course, handle our non-emergency lines. We can enter calls for non-emergency reports. However, in order to try to free up the officers for more emergent needs, we do typically try to transfer our callers to 311 for any of those non-emergency reports. Those things can include things like theft reports, such as like your bikes or packages, the catalytic converters, things of that sort, things like you didn't witness hands-on. They weren't taken like off of your person, with any type of force or anything like that. Identity theft, thefts of services, so like if someone didn't pay you as like an Uber driver or something of that. Credit card fraud, restraining order violations, damage to motor vehicles. That also includes hit and run accidents. So if you were involved in a hit and run accident, no one was injured, that's something that actually 311 can handle. As long as you have all that information that you need, you can just give them a call. They can do the report for you. That way you can give that information to your insurance company. Trailer thefts, fraud, deprivation of parental rights, damage to properties, any kind of obscene or harassing phone calls, kind of, again, all those non-emergent things that aren't in progress, that you maybe didn't see it happen, but you came and saw that your bike was missing out of the front yard or something. Again, non-emergency needs that you can reach 311. In any case that you're not sure, you can always reach 311 first, and they can help direct you. They can transfer you right back to 911 if they determine that this is something that does need to be handled by an officer.
Yeah, we do have a very seamless transfer. So if you call the wrong one accidentally, we can get you to 311 or they can get you to us. They also like to stress that a lot of their reports can be handled online. It's really an easy solution. So you can always check the 311 website and go through those reports and handle it quickly. So it's less stress for you. The BCR, again, mental health crisis concerns. If you see anybody in the public that's having a mental health crisis, give us a call and we can dispatch those, the behavioral crisis response teams. So that's all we have. We actually have to sneak out too. So if you guys have any questions, write them down and Eileen can collect them and we can get answers out to you through an email group. But thank you for having us. And any questions, let me know and we can get the answers to those.
Hi, I'm Inspector Christie Nelson of the 5th Precinct. Is it working? Okay, okay. Yeah, it's really loud. Okay. We're really fortunate to have that group as our first responders. So it really does help us when we answer calls to kind of see what you're seeing without really seeing it first. I'd like to say thank you to Pastor Haug for welcoming us into your space. And thank you to all of you for your incredible support this last year, whether it was with contract negotiations and helping our cops, or being with us after the tragedy of the killing of Jamal. It just meant so much to all the officers and myself to see community members come up and visit us at the station. It was some of the most impactful things that really did help us get over such a tragic event. So I just want to say thank you to all of you for all of that. Question that was asked when I first got here was the fire this morning by the Scottish building. Was that one of the questions on the cards? Okay. So yeah, there was a school bus that started on fire by the Scottish building up on Franklin. That was a completely mechanical problem with brakes. No people were in the bus, so there's no suspicion of arson or anything like that at this stage of that call. So just want to put that out there. And then I was asked to talk a little bit about overall trends. Chief talked about robbery and the robbery protocol. What we also see is crimes of opportunity. And a lot of that is theft from motor vehicle, which is you leave your gym bag in your car, you know it's your dirty gym clothes, but to somebody else that's walking by and sees that in your back seat, doesn't know that that's dirty gym clothes. They think, oh, it could be an iPad, it could be a laptop, it could be a phone. And they quickly break your windows and take that. Where we just ask if that's what's going on, please put your things in your trunk at your origination so people don't see you putting it in your trunk at your destination. So, also, and I know you've all probably heard this, but I'd be remiss without repeating myself, is we see a lot of open ignition, especially this time of year, and that's when you leave your car running, and that's just an opportunity for somebody else to take your car. So we just ask people, please don't do that. I know it just, you're running in and just taking a second, but it really is just that moment for somebody to take your car with that. And I would also like to introduce who comes favorably recommended is our brand new CPS, Faith Randall, and she's been such a great asset to us in the 5th Precinct and doing a fantastic job. So I'd like to turn it over to her for just a second.
Hello, thank you, Inspector, and thank you for all of us thank you for having us here. My name's Faith Randall. Forgive me, I am experiencing a cold, so my apologies. My name's Faith Randall. I am the new crime prevention specialist, the 5th Precinct. I have been here since August, the end of August of 2024. I am not new to the city of Minneapolis, though. I have been an animal control officer for the city of Minneapolis for the last 10 years. That's a little bit of my background, so I do have enforcement with my experience with animals, though. As much as I love animals and with animal control, I obviously met a lot of people, gained a lot of relationships. So that is my expertise, is building those relationships, and I don't think I will ever be able to fill the shoes of Eileen Johnson, who is in her own category of just phenomenon. But that is my role, is that liaison, that bridge, that community in the police department. So that's been what I have been trying to do while making my way here, is introducing myself to the neighborhoods and attending the neighborhood association meetings. If I have not met you, I can't wait to meet you guys. And please invite me to your neighborhoods. Also, I would love to make those connections and speak with people before a crime, after a crime. We do offer home security assessments, business security assessments, and just those personal conversations about what's going on in your community and to hear from you guys. And I bring that back to the inspector at the 5th Precinct. And again, just be that bridge. So happy to be here. Excited to meet everybody.
I'll step up here so I can reference some of my notes here. I'm Calvin Noble with the Minneapolis Park Police Department. I oversee our investigative unit. I've worked with the park board since 1987. I started scooping ice cream cones and serving popcorn at Minneapolis Falls during the summer and worked here at Parade Ice Garden during the wintertime. I then joined the Park Police in 1994 and been with them ever since. I'd like to recognize Commissioner Schaefer, who is sitting in the audience today. Commissioner Schaefer has been a strong advocate for safety in the parks and has been wonderful to work with. And Sergeant Tong Zhang, who's one of our night patrol sergeants, is also here. So for those who aren't totally familiar with the Minneapolis Park Police Department, we're a relatively small department. We have an authorized strength of only 35 officers and about 15 park patrol agents. Those are non-sworn personnel that help with parking enforcement, dog off leash, liquor in the park, things like that. We're only on from 7 a.m. until 1 a.m. So between 1 a.m. and 7 a.m., the Minneapolis Police Department covers calls, 911 calls in the park. And we couldn't do our job and keep the parks as safe as they are without the strong partnership and support from the Minneapolis Police Department. And so, Chief, thank you for all you do to help our department. Eileen asked me to talk about a couple things, so I'll go right down my list here. Over the past 5 years, we've seen some up and downs with crime. 2019 was our lowest crime in the last 5 years, and ironically, 2024 matched that low crime rate. So that's wonderful to see. We had seen the highest spike for violent crime in 2020, and then 2022 was the highest for property crime. And as we talked about with theft from motor vehicles already, that's what spurred the most property crime in 2022. We had over 250 theft from autos in the park systems. And last year, we were able to bring that number down to 99 by targeting the credit card fraud and IDing some of the main players who were involved in this. Parks are a place where you don't want to carry your purse with you or your iPad or whatever you come with. And so a lot of times people get out, they stuff it under the front seat. Somebody's there watching, they grab your stuff, they run off to the gas station, swipe your card really quick, see if the credit card's working, and then off they go to Target or some other city. So we identified that there was a small group working, just hitting one after another after another. And so following up on those credit card frauds, we were able to get some strong convictions against numerous people and put them away for over a year in jail. One thing you can do to help us, obviously, if you're gonna, show up and bring your stuff, put your junk in the trunk is what they often say. But do that before you get to the park. Don't walk around to the back and throw it in. So, get out, take your keys with you, and off you go and go have some fun in our park system. One of the other things that I was asked to talk about is wire theft. So you've probably all heard about that. You probably noticed it within the parks. Why is this light off? Why isn't this working? And we have seen a huge problem in Minneapolis. St. Paul has also seen a problem, and the entire state has seen a problem. So the park board is responsible for the pathways within the park system, and the city fixes the lights on the parkways, on the roadways itself. Mayor Fry referenced that over the past 2 years, City of Minneapolis spent approximately $545,000 just repairing that wire theft. The City of St. Paul in 2023 spent over $1.2 million replacing their wire theft. And they expect that that was going to go up even more in 2024. And some of those cases, they replaced it, and within days, that same wire that they had just replaced was already gone. The city's taken some steps, such as using aluminum wire to try and change some of that, different systems where you can't just pull it out from numerous lights at once, so it would break individually. But more importantly, sometimes we need things such as a legislative change to make those things happen. Everybody probably remembers the catalytic converters and how prominent that was for thefts. The state passed a law that made it illegal to sell that, and 80% reduction since that law took effect. On July 1st of 2025, a law went into effect for wire theft, so you can't sell scrap copper unless you have a state license, and that's the first in the country, I believe. So hopefully we're going to see a similar reduction like we did with the catalytic converters, and if you have to have a state license, that's really going to knock that down. So we're hoping that between the enforcement, extra patrols trying to make arrests, but also that law and not being able to have people just selling that is greatly going to help. Is there anything else? All right. Thank you very much.
Well, let me just start by saying this. I just stood up and that felt so good. So I'm going to give you a chance. We'll take 20 seconds here. If you want to stand up out of that pew, stretch, make some vowels, we'll give you that chance because I know it's been a while. Don't be like the high schoolers who take a chance to leave. That's. Very good, thanks. So I'm Sergeant Garrett Parton. I've been with Minneapolis Police coming up on 10 years now. I've split my time with the police department. I began my first 5 years on downtown dog watch patrol. Loved my time there. Would go back in a heartbeat. But I became into the public information office about 5 years ago. I've been serving in that capacity. And I do love what I do. I think I have a purpose when I get up in the morning, and I take it very seriously, so that's what gets me to work every day. My job as a public information officer primarily is the liaison with the media and our department. So I get to work with all the local media and, because of this department, national and international media. Usually when I say that, I get a lot of vowels of sympathy. That I have to do that. But the reality is that my purpose here tonight is to talk about some success stories that we've seen with the media. They are great partners and are a necessary part of our culture in making sure that stories are told, especially accountability is ensured. The story I want to talk about tonight, it's an ongoing success story, and it relates to juvenile crime. Something that really is plaguing our city and is impacting lives in a very, very negative way. The reality we have is that juvenile crime, which seems to be out of control, really is a smaller group of youth who are repeatedly committing crimes, and we're seeing this revolving door in a system that just can't handle the problems that we're facing with some of the challenges these teens, these kids bring. I say teenagers, that's not true anymore. In addition to just being a small group, increasing in the numbers of crime that they're doing, the age of these children is decreasing. Where we used to see 14, 15, 16 years old, we're now seeing 10, 11, 12, committing violent crimes, making violent threats and doing terrible things. And we have a different system for our juveniles that tries to understand their brains, their development, their circumstances they face as young kids. Because I always ask a question that if you're that violent, what at 10 years old gets you to the point that you're violent? There's something going on that we need to help address to get you out of that system. So the juvenile system is very different in how we deal with crime. And for juveniles, many of them, one of the first things they do when they commit a crime, and it's time to hold them accountable, is they go to court and we check to see if they have an even ability to understand what's going on. Can we hold them accountable? And many times they're found incompetent, not able to understand the process, not understand what they're doing. And so the system puts them right back out into the system, into the environment from which they came. And so as police officers, we are arresting over and over again some of these same juveniles. They get put into the system, they get found incompetent, they get put right back into the environment that they were in. And it's this never-ending circular system that is extremely dangerous to them, to their peers, to the communities that they live in. And we're dealing with kids who are violent, who have guns, and are using those guns to commit violence. They're a danger to the community, they're a danger to each other, because when kids get angry, they lash out. And when angry kids with guns lash out, they shoot each other. And so you could have what used to be friends who were robbing people together, now they get into a rift and there's a shooting that occurs between them. They're a danger to each other, and they're a danger to themselves. They may not understand the consequences of their actions. And so we keep seeing this ongoing issue. And I gotta tell you that as officers, you know, we're not the let's throw them in jail and throw where they can't forget about them. That is not at all what police officers believe or think. We honestly think they need help. But we think there needs to be a system that can interrupt that behavior that keeps happening, that we can put them in a place that keeps them safe, so that the system can figure out how are we going to redirect this child, help them to become a successful adult and so far. Because if we just put them right back out, they're going to continue in the violence and either kill themselves, kill each other, or kill somebody else. And so there came a point as the chief starts to talk about this problem. He became very vocal about the frustrations that we have as police in dealing with this issue. And in that vocalness, round about August of last year, it came to a head when the Hennepin County attorney had a different opinion about how to address the problem. And her answer was just, what she'd said was, the problem is that Minneapolis isn't putting people into our diversion program. And it was frankly a ridiculous reaction to what we were trying to communicate. And so, as you see in this first slide here on our PowerPoint, it came to a head, and you saw for a while a spat in the media between the police chief and the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. And what we really had was just a misunderstanding of what it was we were talking about and what it was we were dealing with. Two very different philosophies and approaches to what was, at the point, two very different problems. She was talking about, let's get kids as they're early before they do serious crimes, and let's divert them. And we're saying, we are dealing with murderers. They don't fit your program, and you have nothing to help us keep these kids alive. And so this came to a head. And the chief came to me and said, in a very passionate directive, we have to get this story out. We need to use the media. And so I started using my relationships with the media, and we have great relationships with our media, because we wanted to start telling this story about what it was we were experiencing as law officers who care very deeply about these children. And by the way, when we talk about a small group, we know them by name. You know, I'm the PIO, the chief gets called, I get called, middle of the night. There's been a homicide, and it's a juvenile. And as a parent, you're like, oh no, it's the call. Now, it's not my kid, but I care about these kids, and I'm thinking, who is it? And I'm terrified it's a name I know. And those calls come. I recognize the name, and so we got to go and deal with kids that we've been trying to keep alive in a system that can't support the things they're dealing with. And so we went out to the media, and you can see here that as we begin to reverberate what we're trying to communicate, as we're trying to say, this is a major problem that needs an immediate solution, but we're years away from any type of solution. As you go to the next slide, we started to see the media pick up, and in fact, even the court system started to say, this is a problem. And so the court started coming out and saying to the Hennepin County attorney, what you're doing is insufficient. Lauren Lamarchek did this story. It's hard to read here. But this judge said that their response to this problem had insufficient urgency and effort. They were not doing enough. And so we started to have other parts of the criminal justice system sounding off as well. Now, I want to say that we were only part of the solution to this problem. Behind the scenes, we also have groups going to the state capitol, Sheriff DeWitt is one of the people who was there advocating for some of the same things that we were trying to get out into the media. So there's just this cacophony of information going out. And then I called Paul Bloom, and by the way, I get along with Paul Bloom great. We're doing fine now. I used to just hate his name when it showed up. Right? Phone rings, Paul Bloom. Hate this guy, right? Number one, how did that guy with that voice and diction ever get into public speaking? I couldn't figure it out. But Paul Bloom, he's a good journalist. He does his job well. He's very thorough. He used to cover public safety, which is why I didn't like him. And then he went over to the courts, and then suddenly we were friends. But because he's in the court system, because he knows the juvenile justice system, I reached out and said, Paul, we've got to get this story out. We want to bring you in. We want to pull back the curtain. We want to show you what we're dealing with. And so we sat him down, and we showed him. You know, as much as we can with trying to keep the protection of child identities and things like that, here's a kid. Look at all these calls. And it would be missing persons, it would be runaways, but then it would be theft, robbery, assault, murder. You can see this progression. And kid after kid, we'd show him, and his heart began to break, much like the investigators who were processing the cases for all of these kids. And then seeing them getting arrested again because they were put back on the street and reoffended. And so Paul came in, and he took this on seriously, and he took it on as a project. And I think in the next couple slides we have here, Paul started pounding a couple times a month special series on what we face in juvenile crime and the challenges that we have. And you can just see, it was early October, mid-October, early November, mid-November. And you can see the headlines that he did. And if you go back, he really does a good job on describing what Chief was feeling with frustration is he's having to stand in front of the public and saying, we have a problem with juvenile crime, what are you doing about it? And the Chief is saying, we aren't doing enough. We need to do more. And so Paul started to say, get that out. And as this was happening, you start to see judges get involved. And then beginning of January, go to the next slide. This is a fantastic headline. Juvenile crime is now a priority among Minnesota lawmakers. So this has gone all the way now to the state capitol, and depending on, all right. Let's keep hope alive. That those who've been elected will take this seriously and begin to develop the resources that we need. Also, what had happened in this time is the Hennepin County Board voted to have $15 million dedicated to a center where we could house some of these individuals. And I think 18th and Chicago is where they're going. It's a number of beds that is specialized to care for these kids who are in desperate need of protection from themselves and from each other. So fantastic, and we think that because of the messages that we were bringing out, that brought some urgency to the fact, and that we contributed to the Hennepin County Board being motivated to do that. And we think, too, that this is a success story as we use the media to get the state legislature to recognize and to step forward and start helping us help our kids. And so that's just some of the things behind the scenes that we're doing as we try to communicate what are we facing that's a real problem and how are we going to solve it. Some of you remember a video of a 10-year-old kid driving a car through a playground. It was all over the place. We knew him by name because he had been all over the place. And I got the call one night of a homicide, recognized the name, and I went down there, and it wasn't the 10-year-old who was dead, but he was there, walking around in a blanket, and that's the second time in his 10-year-old life that he had seen his friend die right in front of him from gunshot wounds. I don't know what is in store for that young 10-year-old, but I gotta believe that he needs some serious intervention. He needs some serious help from adults to step forward and to say, come alongside that young man and get him through what's gonna be a very traumatic life as he's seen that. So that's our hope. Okay? I do not think that this 10-year-old needs to be in jail in any way, shape, or form. But he needs adults to step up and help him, save him from that terrible, terrible environment. And that's really what we're all about and what we're trying to do. I thank you for your time.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Oh, wonderful. Good evening. My name is Eileen Johnson, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak just for a couple of minutes tonight. And I want to begin by thanking all of our safety walkers who are now in 20 neighborhoods across the city. I want to thank them for their active and vital involvement in improving community safety. So I'll just repeat. Although they're not here tonight, I also want to recognize Ward 3 Councilmember Michael Rainville, Park Police Chief Jason Ohado, MPD 1st Precinct Lieutenant Mark Luco, and Martin Patrick 3 owner Dana Swindler for their early and continued support of our ever-growing network of neighborhood safety clubs. They supported us from the very beginning when we were just 5 people in one neighborhood. So whether we participate every day, once a week, or whenever we have a spare moment, whether we walk in our neighborhoods, enjoy our many civic and municipal learning sessions that we have with city leaders, or attend special events, as we are tonight, we are making a difference. We're making a difference for ourselves in terms of friendship, improved knowledge, and personal fulfillment, and we are making a difference for our beloved city in ways that we both can and cannot see. 2024 was a year of great success for our safety clubs. We came together to lend a helping hand at the monthly Lake of the Isles and Bedemakaska cleanups and at the annual Greenway cleanup. Along with our friends from Mad Dads, we helped the Lotus Restaurant in Loring Park replace some of the bad energy on their staircase, negative energy that was threatening to customers and harmful to business. We replaced that with our own special brand of positive energy. We partnered with the MPD 1st and 5th Precincts and Park Police for a peaceful 4th of July at Bedemakaska and the Stone Arch Bridge. We answered the call from Chief O'Hara to educate neighbors on the importance of safe gun storage. We partnered with the 1st Precinct to set up our orange safety information tent next to the alley behind Sex World at bar close. This actually, if I had more time, and I don't because the commissioner is here now, but the thing is, if I had more time, this was one of the funnest nights, as Michelle Hemingway can attest to, that we've ever had as a safety club. So, but to be serious about it, we were an extra set of responsible eyes for people who might on their own find themselves to be in trouble. We're now partnering with the 5th Precinct with Inspector Nelson on a pilot for a new culturally specific neighborhood safety club for the Carmel Mall. This safety club will be comprised of Somali business owners and nearby neighbors. We look forward to this opportunity to strengthen relationships and advance engagement in the Somali community. Additionally, we are working on a pilot for a neighborhood safety club which brings together the 5th Precinct with its neighbors at the MTC Bus Garage, the Umatal Islam Center, and the Adult Teen Challenge residential unit. All of what we do is important, whether distributing crime prevention flyers, ensuring lights out are fixed, picking up litter, removing expired notices from light poles, reporting crimes in progress, helping people in trouble. All of these things matter and add up to a lot. And yet none of these, taken separately or together, are our greatest accomplishment. Our greatest accomplishment and what we are most proud of is this. By our steady, slow, and consistent approach, by keeping true to our commonly held values of friendship and consideration, we have been able to help advance community-oriented policing in our neighborhoods. Through our deep understanding of our own responsibility to participate and help, through our sincere belief that our service matters, we have developed trusted relationships, friendships, within and across neighborhoods, with law enforcement, and with city leaders. We are excited to continue to help advance community-oriented policing. We are proud partners with MPD and Park Police in this effort. We invite you to join us. Together we stand for a safer community. Thank you.
Well, good evening. I'm Todd Barnett, the Commissioner of Community Safety. I know we're in church, but I am interested in the sex world story. It seems maybe not appropriate for this occasion, but you left us hanging. Matter of fact, I set myself a timer because I was told that there's supposed to be time for questions. I think some of you know I'm a former judge and I will talk forever. So I am not going to do that. It is so good to see all of the orange shirts out there. You don't know what it's like to sometimes walk into council's chambers and you know you're going to be under fire, but you see the orange shirts and you think, oh boy, it's not going to be too bad. Afterwards, someone will give me a hug. It's going to be okay. Eileen, I just wanted to say thank you, really, for your just unwavering support. You, I know. I'm going to get to the other people, but I want to thank you. She called and said, can you come? I was like, I got another event. I'm going to be late. No problem. Just get here. And so I'm here. But all of you do so much good work for the community to make it better and to make it safe. The safety walks make a difference. They do. This is something that Chief O'Hara and I've talked about in the past, just about visibility. It makes a difference when people are out and visible. It makes a difference for us to have the same goal to build a safe community, and you work so hard to do that. You make my job easier by being community members that understand some of these complex issues that we're dealing with constantly. And I wasn't here earlier, but I heard about the juvenile crime and the complexities of what we deal with in juvenile crime. I made a comment in an interview that for me, the challenge that's ahead is accountability for our juveniles. And later, I heard that it ruffles some feathers in the prosecutor's office. And that wasn't my point. My point is that we all are accountable along the way. We all have a responsibility for our juveniles, no matter where you are in the system. One thing that most of you would not know about, I don't know if the chief even remembers this. I was chief judge in Hennepin County, and I met Chief O'Hara for the first time in his office. The first thing that he asked me is, what are we going to do about these juveniles? Because, like you've heard, they're seeing the same people, and it's not necessarily the ones that have gotten in trouble, but they're on the fringe. And the officers know that eventually they'll be there. But this is something that we have to do, and that is to have accountability and to make some changes to make it safe for all of us. If you don't know, I'm in charge of 5 departments. I don't run them. I just kind of oversee. Chief O'Hara is the chief of police, and he runs the police department. Chief Tyner is head of fire. He runs the fire department. Director Hodney is the head of 911, and our director Sayre is the head of emergency management. Tomorrow is the last day for Director Nelson Brown in neighborhood safety, and so I'm going to take on that role as well. as we move along, at least until someone gets here. One of the things I want to talk about and just kind of highlight in these last couple of minutes, up until this point, this year, 2025, is going to be full of a lot of politics. It's going to be local politics, national politics, and you're going to hear a lot of different things. But one thing that I want to really highlight for you and say is that Minneapolis, if you go back to 2020 and to where we are today, we are in such better place than we were before. And so I want to highlight the good things, because politics will get us to argue about those things that some people might think, oh, that's a problem. No, we're doing well. If you haven't heard of it, it's Safe and Thriving Community Report. Director Amanda Harrington, for me, is in charge of that. When you think of police and the consent decree and the settlement agreement, everybody focuses here on compliance. But what we're trying to do is not have police continue to arrive at every single call. We don't need them for every single thing that happens. We need some alternatives. And that's the Safe and Thriving Community Report. That's where those alternatives lie, and they lie in the Department of Neighborhood Safety. And so I won't bore you with those things, but it's preventive, restorative, and responsive services. We opened up a safety center back in November on the south side. We've also, as you know, have secured a building for the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center. That, cross my fingers every time we talk about it, it keeps getting back and back, but hopefully sometime in 2026 we'll have that open. We've done a lot of great things. I'm not sure if the chief have talked about it, but our police department, the recruiting process is going very well. We're lucky to have Chief O'Hara leading us and Mayor Fry trying to get the right people in place. The consent decree and the settlement agreement will change systems. It will change the system for our police department and other departments. It is the people that are in those places that are going to change culture. And I hope that you see for the police department, Chief O'Hara is doing that. 911, you might not know this, but in 911, we started some new technology on callback. Our staff spend a lot of time in 911 for drop calls, and so we have an automated system to deal with that, and that's new. 2020, we had a lot of first responders leave Minneapolis. Some of those first responders were our 911 staff. I'm happy to report that they're almost fully staffed, and I'm hoping, cross my fingers, that this last batch pass all their tests and we'll be fully staffed up in 911. Our fire department continues to recruit and be on the cutting edge of training. We're trying to get 4 firefighters to a rig or truck. We have 3. I think we're heading in the right direction there. If you don't know, and I'll kind of finish up with this, the Department of Community Safety has a bi-weekly newsletter. You can go to the website, and it's called the OCS Dispatch, and you can keep up to date with some of these things. But there's so many positive things that we're doing, and I think when we're talking about the media, one of the things that you'll see in 2025 is us as a department continue to push out good stories to the media about all of the great things that are happening in our departments, not just under all 5 departments under the community safety departments, but all over the city. There's so many great things going on there. The last thing that I'll just share with you is that I know council moved the contract for our behavioral crisis unit from neighborhood safety to our fire department. you will see no change in the service. I know I've gotten a lot of questions about it. We will work diligently to make that happen. You will not, they will remain integrated in our 911 system. They've handled over 30,000 calls since, I think, 2021. They will continue to provide that service. We will look at this as an opportunity to expand the service. So please, when you hear people talk about the behavioral crisis unit and our response and it going to fire, the sky is not falling. It is okay. We're going to do some great things. And so I'll just end with that so you can ask your questions. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, and if we could just have one more round of applause for our whole speaker panel, please. Thanks, everyone. We're going to move on to our question and answer segment here. Before we do that, I was told in the back that I did an adequate job of introducing the speaker panel, but then forgot to introduce myself. I'm Marty Carlson. I'm president of the Church Council here at Lake of the Isles, and I'm also the vice chair of the Kenwood Neighborhood Organization, which is every bit as exalted as it sounds. So, as far as questions go, I'm just going to pose them to the panel, let you folks decide who's best to answer them. I'll encourage you to take the time that you need to answer the question, but also remind you the more compact you are with your answer, the more questions we'll get to. And we are going to end promptly at 8:30. First question is an important softball. Simply, what can we as a community do to better support the police and our safety?
Hi, thank you for the question. Well, continue what you're doing. You guys have, it's not on.
There you go.
Nope.
Is it, nope? Okay, oh yeah, this one's on. Continue what you're doing. You've got such a great voice that expands beyond this room, but throughout the whole community of Minneapolis, whether it's in spaces of yourselves or as we've seen and heard in council chambers, and just showing up for each other and all of us.
I would just add, please take any opportunity that you can to show your support. I mentioned earlier, how proud I am of all the young people in the back there that are community service officers, our cadets, and this whole crowd here. They all chose to start their training while we were still kind of struggling to find anyone. And so they're remarkably good people. They have incredible stories, and I don't think they get enough recognition. Related to that, the other side of that coin is please show support to the officers that endured the destruction of the city, that endured This was a police department that was typically staffed with over 900 police officers. Since 2020, over 500 of their colleagues walked away. And they kept coming to work day after day after day, while they were all being painted with a broad brush by the entire world. And quite frankly, they did not turn their backs, not only on each other, because if everybody leaves, who's going to back him up? They also did not turn their backs on the residents, and that is not appreciated enough. So those officers who stayed while everyone else was walking away, they stayed when the going got tough, and they keep trying to do the right thing to re-earn and rebuild this department. They are heroes.
Thank you, Chief O'Hara. Next question. This comes from one of our local elected officials. I promised her I'd slip it in. It's a two-parter, and it is, how is the MPD working with NSD partners on group violence intervention, i.e. gang violence? And then part two is, how can we get more guns off the street?
I will try and be as concise as possible. I have a lengthy history of supporting community violence intervention in my previous role in Newark, and I have relationships with a number of violence prevention groups in the city. They are contracted in various ways, some by the city, some by transit, some by private entities. But I know when there's times when I need them, I know there's a number of groups I call and they respond like this. One example, over the summer, we had 2 weekends in a row. We had all these teenagers, and a lot of them from St. Paul, too, from outside the city, coming downtown late at night and hanging out where there's nothing for them to get into but trouble. And we had violence happen. We had, some folks get shot. We had somebody lose their life. And I was able to get a number of those groups to partner with us to go out and address curfew violations. And they did that with us, and several of these groups that did it. And we were able to quickly, like this, end what was becoming a trend. And so we have great relationships. A lot of our precinct inspectors do with different groups that work in different neighborhoods. And that's something that is in a daily, everyday thing. The other part is getting guns off the street. The number one thing that I focus on here is gun violence in the city. The year before I got here, there were 655 people shot in Minneapolis, which is just astronomical. That is more people shot in 1 year than what we had the total strength of the police department. That's insane. And so we've had a very strong effort on trying to get illegal guns off the streets. The last 3 years, there's been over 1,000 illegal guns off the street. Just by Minneapolis, not to mention the guns that are recovered by the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, by the feds, and so on. So there has been, despite the challenges that we have, it's remarkable. We're recovering more guns than ever with 40% fewer police officers. I think it shows that we are being as precise as possible by the people that are out here who have guns and should not have them, and trying to be as precise as possible at stopping a lot of the harm. And I think the cops have done an amazing, amazing job at that.
Thank you so much. Next question we have, I'm sure this is on a lot of people's minds because it's timely. As Immigrations and Customs Enforcement has announced an intent to step up an active presence in our local community, how does the Minneapolis Police Department anticipate interacting with them or see its role changing, if at all? We revised our policy just last week to give additional guidance to our police officers around, not just immigration enforcement, but to show examples of ID cards that are issued by consulates of foreign governments, provide guidance for dealing with crime victims, and also just to be very clear about reality. We live in a federal system. The police do not enforce civil immigration law. It is literally not our job. But beyond that, I just want to be incredibly clear that we cannot be effective at addressing real crime in this city if a whole lot of people in town are afraid to call the police. Despite what you hear, the reality is they're not just all these undocumented folks going around in your neighborhoods victimizing people. If anything, they are the ones being the victims. And I can't have a situation where they are too scared to call the police when someone just put a gun in their face while they're just trying to do some menial job. So I've been very, very clear that this is not our business. It's not our job. We don't have the authority to do it. We're not going to interfere with federal law enforcement either. And we have great relationships with all of federal law enforcement, Homeland Security and ICE included, because we want to do everything that we can to get the people that are causing harm in the city off the street. All right, We'll make time for a couple more questions here before we wrap up. This next question, it's a little out of left field, but it's an interesting question, and I'll be curious as to the answer. Why not use ankle bracelets to monitor repeat juvenile or other offenders? Wouldn't that be helpful?
Well, we do. I mean, I have seen that. You know, the problem is, like the example Sergeant Parton gave, that 10-year-old that I know because I saw some nods, that 10-year-old that was driving the stolen car through the playground at the elementary school, that then a couple weeks later Sergeant Parton saw when his friend got shot because he's still out on the street. When he drove the car through the playground at the elementary school in North Minneapolis, we had already had 50 contacts with him. How, even after that, was he still out on the street to be there and witness his friend getting shot for the second time? Not to mention, his dad was murdered the year before. I mean, this is a matter of trying to keep these kids alive, let alone try to, prevent them from harming other people. So, I mean, I think it is just a problem that is just, with a small group of kids, it is absolutely an emergency. And just the system is not prepared for the support that they need.
Last question we're going to ask here. It's a two-parter. Is it true that there's been a reduction in the budget for the MPD? And if so, how are you planning to manage that for the coming year?
So yes, there has been a reduction by some line items and some things that have been targeted. The mounted patrol was targeted and some other things that money was taken and reduced to go to other things. The silliness that you'll hear from people who are not serious and are just, they're still on this political thing that you don't need the police or that we're all terrible, is the expense of the police department has actually increased. That's true. Each year, the actual expense has increased because everything in life has increased over the last few years with inflation. However, we have less and less ability to do a lot of the things that you used to do. And it's compounded by the fact that we do have a consent decree with the state, and we're presumably going to have one soon with the federal government. And consent decrees are the exact opposite of defund the police. It requires millions and millions of dollars of investment to do new work that did not exist before. So yes, it's true that things were cut, but yes, it's also true that the cost of the police department has gotten greater over the last few years, despite the fact that we have fewer people and have less funding for other things. The only piece of that only other thing I would add is it just, there has been a contract was approved over the last year, which does provide significant raises for police officers, which is not the panacea to our recruiting problems, but it's something that is necessary. We cannot have the Minneapolis Police Department be among the lowest of those in the region and expect to get the results that people want. So as much as everything that has happened, only other thing I would add is it makes the cost for us to have policing and the cost for us to try and attract young people, if we continue to allow to go unchecked this ridiculous narrative that they're all terrible, they're all killers, and they're all racist. Every time people in positions of authority say things like that, you're jacking up the price of what we're going to have to pay to have a police force.
Well, I hope you'll join me all again in thanking our speaker panel here this evening. Again, a special thanks to all of you. The last nose count I got of the group here came in at 160, and last I heard we had another 59 people watching online. So thank you so much to all of you. Have a great evening.
Hope to see you again at another one step meeting.